and only part savings, not all your savings. Because equity is a risk capital, it's a risk investment, risky investment. I mean, you may end up making long term 18, 19% long term, not short term. It's a very good avenue for investment. But if you invest out of borrowed money, you can have trouble. So my first advice to investor is don't invest out of borrowed money. And if you want to speculate, be prepared that you can lose the whole capital. Yes, there are investors in the market who make a lot of money out of speculation, but that percentage is in single digit, not more than that. So you think you are an expert and you can make money out of speculation? Okay, very good. But you should start that journey with this thing in mind. Secondly, what I would like to say is don't believe on tips. Tips are given only in the restaurants. If you want to make investment in the market, do your due diligence, do your research, and only then make investment. And of course, coming to alternate investment products, besides equity, you have commodities market. Again, commodities market, not all commodities are for investment. If you invest for long term in a agri commodity, maybe it will become zero. Only some commodities like bullion are there for long term investment. So if you invest in commodity market, you should know where to invest for long term and where to use commodity market for trading and hedging and not for investment. Similarly, there are other products. I mean, alternate products, there is Gift City. And Gift City, there is American depository receipt, which you can now invest directly and the shares will be transferred in your name. So you can use that 2,50,000 and invest through Gift City. So that's an excellent product. Similarly, there are REITs, there are InvITs, which can give you regular dividend, and there are low risk products. So you can get a dividend of 5-6%, plus you can get capital appreciation. So you can invest that as an alternate product. And of course, now SEBI has come out with this electronic gold receipt. Now you can buy a electronic gold receipt. I think the trading is yet to start. Should start maybe within a month or two. I think the exchange is trying to start it by Diwali, but it might not happen by Diwali. But that can be an excellent product for buying gold. If you want to accumulate gold, that can again be a product. So I will not take much of your time. I will like to wish you happy Diwali, because we all in capital market deal with Lakshmi ji. So a lot of Lakshmi ji ki kripa to all the investors who have joined us, and best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ashok ji, for your insightful conversation. Today's we have Mr. Rajesh RD North as our chief guest, and as you know, World Investor Week is running, and we requested him for the shorter period, so I will not request him to stay till end, but I'll request him to say a few words and encourage us.
Thank you, Narendra ji. First of all, let me thank CPI for inviting me to this event today of World Investor Week. And I think congratulations to CPI and all other participants who have been doing an excellent job with respect to this World Investor Week, where everybody is putting their efforts in ensuring that India as a country and SEBI as a regulator, we ensure to reach our voice, and we ensure that we are there to make the investors aware who is already an investor in the market and probably who's coming new to the market, both of them aware of the risks involved and the various measures or the kind of safety measure that they need to take before investing in the markets. Sir, thank you, Narendra ji and Ashok ji. and the co-panelists on the panel there today. And sir, before I start, today's, I think we are going to have a discussion on importance of asset diversification. I understand this. So I would just like to give a small disclaimer that whatever I'm talking today is probably, these thoughts are my own and personal ones, and they have nothing to do with SEBI or the regulatory approach as such. Sir, what happens is that this is my general understanding of what I'm going to talk is generally just off the cuff, of a general understanding of what I have about the markets. Investors generally think that, investing is easy and, it's just probably a part of allocating capital and just keeping track of the investments. But we understand that, yes, keeping track is very important. But apart from that, probably there are other vital steps an investor has to take as part of his investment journey. And one of them is the asset or portfolio diversification. That's very important. So when we talk about asset diversification or a portfolio diversification, what we mean is generally that the investor should spread the investments across different assets and different asset classes. There is an age-old adage, don't put all your eggs in one basket. ये कैसे आया, क्यों आया? Farmer जा रहा था अपना पूरे अंडे लेके, गिर गया. Entire eggs were gone. So therefore, the adage came up, yes, don't put all your eggs in one basket. These words of wisdom probably, which were talked some probably few hundred years back, while they were probably for the farming, but today they are also well meant, and equally they encapsulate the idea in the investment also, that we should not risk all our investments in a single asset class. So basically, when you talk about diversification, it's all about spreading money into multiple investments, multiple kinds of investment probably. The idea is that because of diversification, the portfolio may be protected. If any one particular class of asset or a group of assets, they behave contrary to the goals that the investor may have in his mind. But at the same time, the investor should also understand, I mean, this is a kind of, word of caution that everybody should think of, that no diversification can actually eliminate risk. When it comes to investing, almost, everything is risky. But yes, diversification probably to some extent can significantly reduce the exposure to risk. And while we know that different investments have different influences and they have different degrees of volatility, in a diversified portfolio, what happens is that the volatility or the price swings, they probably balance each other. And they try to keep the investment on a very even keel probably. Now why is that how diversification can be achieved by the investor? So there are certain factors probably the investor should keep in his mind when he thinks about diversification. It can range from the risk level they want to have, what is the risk level he's ready to take, from a low risk level to a high risk level probably. What is his investment needs, whether he wants it to earn income, whether he's looking for some kind of appreciation or is looking for an aggressive growth in his investments. Then probably to the liquidity factors, whether it is he's looking for a certain marketable kind of securities or he's looking to keep his investments in a pure cash kind of securities. And then probably the time horizon, how long he would like to give his investments to give a return over a period of time, whether he has got a very less period at his hand to of disposal or he's looking for a long-term investment. So probably all these things will somehow make up the diversification. How can you achieve the diversification? Now, when we talk about diversification, I'm just talking off the cuff all these things. So when we talk about diversification talks about different asset classes. Now, what do we mean by asset classes? Asset classes can be right from simple investments in stocks, bonds, derivatives, commodities, or you have fixed deposits, probably, or you have real estate. That's what is one of the asset classes. You, like Sir Ashok ji mentioned, you have precious metals, you have precious stones also probably. So each of the asset class, when we talk about this thing, they carry a different risk and return profile and volatility. Generally, the people who invest in the markets, they say that the higher the risk, the higher the profit. But vice versa may also be true. So each has to be very careful. Further, as we understand that each of these asset class what we're talking about, they can perform differently under similar market conditions. And what is very important is asset allocation or splitting of the assets among categories. You try to, most of the investors, what they try to do is that they put a percentage of the investment they would like to do in each of these asset classes, and they try to probably balance it. And then they attach this entire investments to the risk tolerance probably, and to the extent of period they would like to give to each of the asset class for the investments to grow. Similarly, there's also a concept called diversification within the asset classes. So, I mean, that also probably everybody needs to understand, the investor need to understand. I'm sorry, I'm telling probably very basic, because I know all of you understand these things very well. Probably there may be certain people in the audience who may be probably enriched with these things. So when we talk about diversification within the asset classes, it's like within securities, you can put something called mid cap or large cap or small cap, or if you are or if you don't want to do on your own, probably you can assign it to a professional called a mutual fund. So they take care of all these things. So just for the, since I'm talking about stocks, I'll just continue with the example of stocks. Then the kind of diversifications we can do within the same asset class are actually very vast. You can do a lot of diversifications. You can also do diversification by way of geography. It can be domestic, international. It can be by industry, sectors, all those things. There are many things are there. And similarly, when there are also mutual funds who probably keep shifting the assets depending on the market conditions, shifting the securities where they want to invest. So these are all probably way of diversification. Now, when we talk about diversification in terms of asset classes and within the asset classes, one question probably that may come to everybody's mind is that how much should we diversify? I don't know whether there is because while we have the number of asset classes are very limited, but when you look at the universe of people who invest, it's very huge. The investor base is very huge, but the number of asset classes are very limited. So how much different investments can you do, and how much investments should one do, and how much diversification you can do, and whether that to manage your investment risk. What I understand is that probably there may not be a simple or a single answer to all these things. How much one needs to diversify. It's all based on one's decisions which he has to take, like Narendra ji and Ashok ji have mentioned. It has to be based on due diligence, your research, your judgment. Your portfolio can include probably 10 assets, 20 assets, or whatever it may be. But all has to go through a major kinds of things that you need to keep in mind, which I talked about earlier about the risk profiling you need to do. Then there's another concept that is called the tracking of the returns within the diversification. And one concept is called the correlation. So when we understand that if a stock A goes up and it comes down the same amount of stock B, so therefore it is there, these kind of stocks are generally said to be perfectly correlated. Similarly, when a stock A goes up and comes down the same amount of stock B, these stocks are said to be perfectly negatively correlated. So basically what I was trying to say is that in the real world, what happens is that securities are often positively correlated with one another, and their relation is probably of varying degrees. And any securities which are less positively correlated with one another, they actually diversify, they give you a better diversification of the assets. So when I was talking about the concept of correlation, probably I was trying to give an example of what will be the better correlation when we go for investments. Now, when we have talked about so many things about diversification can help the investor probably in getting a better return on the investments. Whether there are any drawbacks on this diversification, there may be one or two drawbacks as I understand. Basically, diversification may not be everybody's cup of tea. It actually has costs involved in it. And generally, we know that the general Indian population, what they do is that because to achieve diversification, it actually requires a lot of time, a lot of design it requires, and it is time consuming. They generally try to stick to putting their money in fixed deposits or, provident fund and all those things. So here probably the investor should actually evaluate whether what they're doing is right or not. So that is what I would like to say. So in the end, what should the investor do now? But when we're talking about so many things that diversification holds, as we all understand that the investment journey is probably not a non-linear process. It's going to be a non-linear process. So therefore, he has to basically understand one thing, that he has to go by his own research, his own understanding of the markets, his risk retain trade that is suitable for him, his level of personal risk appetite, his investment objectives, his financial goals, and the time that he has got at his disposal to achieve what he wants to do. In the end, I can say only one thing, that an intelligently crafted asset allocation through information assimilation and informed decision will serve as an investment strategy. That is the most important thing. This would help him to actually balance the risk reward to create a diversified portfolio, which would help him to even out the investment risk or a long-term planning. That's the only thing I can say. And in the end, he has to be very disciplined in investing and check that his portfolio, if there is any inconsistency in the portfolio, he has to weed them out and ensure that only those assets which are performing over a period of time should be kept in the portfolio. This is what I wanted to say, sir. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you for your
I think that was good, comprehensive.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
So all the points of diversification you have covered. And just to, when I was in school, my teacher, commerce teacher, was very, fascinated by the markets. And this is 83, 82, basically, that point of time. And what he told us at that point of time, 100 minus your age should be in the riskier asset. And that covers everything, the timing, diversification. Yes. So right. Those were the good teachers at that point, and we have listened it so many times. So there are, methods of diversification, what all assets. You have briefly pointed out the various options. So we have lined up person of commodity market, from the equity market. We'll take their views also one by one. Since you are busy today, we will not hold you back for a longer period of time.
No problem, sir. I'll be there listening to all of you. It will be actually a pleasure to listen to so many experts out there. Our understanding and your understanding is definitely different in the markets, and I'll be very happy to listen to all of you, sir. Though I may not be visible probably at times, but I'll be definitely listening to all of you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So all the best to all of you, sir.
Thank you. To take it forward, I'll request, Mr. Kishore Narne. He is, every day I listen to him on the TV, his take on commodity market, various markets. So I'll start with Kishore on the commodity market. Kishore, your view on diversification, then say format is I give you initial talk to talk about the your commodity, your investment for briefly. Then I'll put few of the questions which may arise, which are natural to the investors. So over to you, Kishore, on commodities.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Ashok ji, Wadhwa ji, Naveen, Rajesh ji, Sandeep, and Sunil ji. I think, see, Rajesh ji has not left anything. Mostly he covered a lot of things, but see, to be very precise, there's a lot of, I can say, myths and confusions about asset allocation in general public, rather than it's not simple enough. Because agar asset allocation mein, Wadhwa ji, I think I can use both Hindi and English, right? So it could be. एसेट एलोकेशन में ये कंफ्यूजन होता है कि हमेशा कि कौन सा एसेट सेलेक्ट करना चाहिए एंड शुड वी डाइवर्सिफाई व्हाट आर दोस एसेट क्लासेस सो प्रेडोमिनेंटली फर्स्ट आता है बिकॉज द मोमेंट यू स्टार्ट इन्वेस्टिंग आपका fixed deposit आ गया and equities आ गया. So then you start looking at diversifying. The primary asset class equities बन जाता है. But not necessarily that's going to be true because there are many other asset classes like bonds, which is in general not really available for retail investors. You can go and invest in a bond fund kind of or mutual funds, which are like debt mutual funds kind of things, where you'll get exposure into bonds. So to some extent, most of the investors go to that extent. Second way of diversifying is that actually people buy stocks in different this thing. For example, I want to have an exposure to commodities per se, then I will buy some commodity stocks like who are the smelters or producers or miners kind of stocks, and try to get some diversification into that. But beyond that, generally retail investors or individual investors who can say don't think beyond that and don't venture beyond that. And people actually mistake diversification to speculation, and because unfortunately in other asset classes like bonds and even for commodities, the cash market instruments are not really available. They are available, but they're not very easy to trade for individuals because they are not listed or they're not exchange traded. So they have to dirty their hands by actually getting into physical markets. So on exchange traded contracts on exchange scripts or instruments are mostly derivatives. So the moment derivatives comes, the line between investing and speculation becomes much lesser and lesser visible. And they tend to venture into speculation and then say that, okay, this is not the way we should be done. So diversification actually has to be absolutely considered on three primary pillars. Number one, what is the need of diversification for thing? And absolutely no doubt that one has to have a mix of asset classes. There is absolutely no doubt in that. It has been, the theory has been proven more again and again from multiple decades of investing, that one should have stocks, bonds, commodities, and cash. But again, what is the way? So then the three pillars one should understand is absolutely, first is time horizon. So what is my investment horizon? What is my financial goal? So if I'm looking for short-term returns, then the guy will fall into that speculative trader kind of a bucket. No, my time horizon is a couple of years or maybe more. Then he'll fall into that investor kind of a horizon. And somebody who is looking at a decade or more, then probably you should be looking at a very different instruments altogether. Second is risk tolerance. Risk tolerance is absolutely important because the moment you diversify, the common perception which is getting created, which gets created, is that you reduce risk by diversification. But at times you actually introduce more risk into your portfolio by diversification also. So you should also understand what is the time frame. As Vadhvaji said that general rule of thumb is that how much of your money should be in your risky assets is 100 minus your age. It's a simple way. There could be multiple ways of calculating that, but you should understand what is the risk profile of each asset class and how much is my risk tolerance to that. So according to that, you should actually start looking at diversification. And a conservative investor might look at.
Sabarwalji, you have to mute, please. Sabarwalji.
So a conservative investor might look at bonds and instruments like gold as a much more heavy weights in their portfolio. A very aggressive investor might even look at indices or even commodities like crude as part of his portfolio. So it depends it's very individualistic, and one investor has to decide for it. And finally, so time horizon, risk tolerance, and risk versus rewards. Actually, risk versus reward is that typically how much is I'm willing to lose, because the moment you have to assess that before you invest in any asset class, for that matter, it could be bonds, it could be equities, or it could be any asset class for that matter. You should assess your risk, because there is no gain without any pain. So the moment you assess that, according to that, your capital allocation should be there. Because the moment you have an asset allocation, that means you are allocating your capital, and risk is the primary factor you should consider before allocating, not the returns. Returns are not really important. Risk is the most important thing. So once you decided all these things, then the choice of investments comes into play. Because if you want to participate, like when I'm looking from the commodity market perspective, if you want to participate in commodities or diversify something into commodities, then you have multiple instruments of choice. You can go and invest into commodity stocks, as I said earlier. You can invest in commodity funds, like there are commodity ETFs. There are physical commodities like gold, silver. You can actually buy physical and keep it in your locker. The digital versions of the physical assets are there available. There are AIFs, and finally derivatives as well, on the exchange traded derivatives. So the choice of instrument depends on what your risk tolerance is. So then also the time horizon. If you are looking for short-term diversification, short-term returns, derivatives makes more sense. If you're looking for very, very long-term this thing, then physical possession of gold and silver makes sense. If you're looking at 3, 4, 5 years kind of perspective, ETFs makes more sense. So this all has to fall in place. Once the investor decides to diversify into commodities, the instrument of choice has to be decided by time horizon, risk tolerance, and how much risk he is willing to take in each of the asset class. So it's very important. And even the moment you choose, let's say, any of these asset class, like ETFs, you have to understand the cost of participating in that asset. ETFs have certain cost. If you're investing in physical gold, you have to keep it in a bank locker, etc., or kind of you have to see. And if you're looking at commodity mutual funds or something, then you have to see the expense ratio. If you're investing in derivatives, and that for a medium term or long term, you should be knowing how much is my carry cost. That's my rollover cost on an annual basis, right? For example, typically I keep telling my investors, if you want to invest in gold, because in general, the moment commodity diversification means the first commodity which comes into play is gold. So if you want to invest in, let's say, 100 grams of gold, so you can buy 100 units of ETFs, or 100 units of EGR, the electronic gold receipt, or 100 units of sovereign gold bonds, or you can buy 100 grams biscuit and keep it, or you can buy 100 grams gold on MCX. So the cost is very different in each variety of instrument. And when we look at the derivative side, the annual rollover cost of holding gold derivative and rolling over tends to be 2.5-3%, in excess sometimes at 3.5%. So if you are really disciplined enough investor, so even holding gold in derivative form, which comes with a cost of 3.5%, where you don't need to invest your entire 100 grams worth of capital, you can invest, let's say, 10% worth of that as part of margin, and some additional money for mark to market. So let's say 20% I'm keeping it for that gold, which 10% additional will take care of my mark to market, and rest of the 80% can be put into any fixed deposit or fixed income product, which can generate higher returns and still give him the participation of gold. So it's very, very scientific in a way, the moment one decides to diversify his portfolio and see what is the best option for that. Finally, in some of the cases, like crude oil, for example, so because of late, in the backdrop of Ukraine and OPEC plus and the recent rise in crude oil prices, crude becomes very attractive proposition, and a lot of investors, we have been getting calls that how to invest in crude. I want to participate in this crude rally and all those things. So everyone who wanted to invest in gold, there is no other way of doing it apart from the derivatives. So some of the times you don't have choice of instruments, then you have to go for whatever is available and plan it the way then you have to assess the risk tolerance level and assess the risk reward ratio and what kind of capital I should be putting there, because most of these asset classes could be very volatile and it will add risk to your portfolio rather than reducing it there. Some of the assets like gold will reduce your portfolio risk, but some of the assets like crude will enhance your risk. So it has to be very calculated and well thought of before doing it. It's not just today I just decided to diversify and just I go and pick up few asset classes. It doesn't work like that.
Thank you, Kishore. Thank you. It was well explained by you how to participate and what are the risks on various asset classes. And just a small word, a small question to you. Say there is a buzz in the system that after this COVID-19, there was a policy, word over policy of China plus a lot of manufacturing is going to come to India. See, I have to participate in the growth of our country as we are going to grow to 5 trillion and 10 trillion. And they are saying by 2047 will be around 30-40 trillion. There is a huge opportunity because one of the studies says that 40% will come from the commodities sphere. So how investor can participate in the commodities if there is going to be a boom in the market?
Vadvaji, I think I completely agree with you. There is an absolute commodity super cycle which is coming up. There is a huge, tremendous demand coming up, but at the same time, we have a significant amount of supply side issues which will cause price rise. So undoubtedly, today, if you speak to anyone in the financial markets or anyone in the industry, everyone knows that inflation is here and it is going to be staying. And that means if I had to participate in this inflation and make some money out of that, you have to participate in commodity boom. So there are 2-3 different ways of doing it. One is definitely commodity ETFs. In India, we have gold and silver ETFs. To some extent, silver might provide a better opportunity to participate in that rally because silver has a higher beta. But unfortunately, both gold and silver have not reacted to inflation because the dollar has been consuming a lot of gains which has been there. So dollar has been rising and it has prevented gold and silver to rally significantly. So that is not able to get it done. Second, unfortunately, in India, for domestic investors, we don't have crude ETFs or natural gas ETFs, which are there available in overseas markets, but not in India. So the only thing you can come into play are some of the indices which we have. So on MCX, we have Buldex, that's the bullion index, so which will give you a participation into gold and silver both. Metaldex, which will give you participation into industrial metals, and the energy index, which will give you participation into energy commodities. So all these 3 indices will give you participation into the commodity world. So I would prefer, rather than say gold and silver is considered as a currency rather than a commodity, gold is more a currency. So a Metaldex and energy index will allow you to participate in this commodity boom. Because these are leveraged instruments and these are indices. So by having a basket of products like Metaldex, which reduces significantly your individual commodity risk, but it still overall gives you a participation. But because they are leveraged indices and leveraged instruments, I would like to keep hardly 1 to 2% of my total investable surplus as part of this instrument rather than putting a lot of money into that, because when the rally comes anyway, these 2% will give you a significant participation into commodity rally rather than putting a lot of money into that. Again, the risk reward or risk tolerance is very important here, and I would suggest not to exceed that.
Thank you, Kishore, for your expert advice. So the country of MSME and country where the wealth, to 3 crore accounts became 10 crore accounts, lot of participation in equity markets, what we have seen. So we have today the star in the equity sphere who appears on the ZTV every day, Sandeep Jain, who will bring in here the perspective of equity market. What are the sectors and where the investor needs to invest, and what are the instruments for a first-time investor, whether he should go through mutual fund route or directly invest, and what are the ETFs and what are the other instruments where one can invest. Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you so much, Narendra ji, for the brilliant introduction and kind introduction. And I'm really thankful to be invited as a speaker to this webinar. Sorry, अब seminar की आदत हो गई है. पहले webinar की आदत थी, तो seminar में webinar बोलते थे. But anyways, I've been listening to all the experts. अशोक जी को सुना, आपको सुना, किशोर जी को सुना. किशोर जी को तो सुन के बहुत मजा आती है, हमेशा हम commodities में सुनते आए हैं. और राजेश जी को सुना, and I hope he is listening to us also, though he is off video. But anyways, and Ashok ji, thank you so much. Mittal ji भी अब मुझे दिख गए हैं, तो and everyone is here. So what we can do is diversification की बात कर रहे थे हम. मैं diversification के लिए एक बात कहना चाहूंगा कि equities, commodities, currencies, ये सारे diversification के tools है, ये mutual funds है, but inside the asset classes also there is a very good way of diversification through instruments also. Like किशोर जी अभी metal dex और indices की बात कर रहे थे, तो वो भी एक तरीका है करने का. वैसे ही I have got different instruments जो कि different investment avenues, जिसमें आप अगर real estate में जाना चाहते हो तो real estate के लिए आप there is a very good way of investing in real estate, that is real estate investment trust. And if you want to bet on the infrastructure development or infra push of the government, you can go through InvITs, like IRB InvIT is there. So there are lovely instruments, and these are very new hybrid instruments which somehow Indian economy or Indian investors have not seen in the past, and now they are doing brilliant. And somehow I would like to talk about direct participation and indirect participation also. Like if we want to come for direct equities, yes, you need to be an expert, you need to know about fundamentals, you need to understand technicals also, you need to understand options also. So somehow I feel that when you come to equities, investment is fine, but if you want to become a trader, then you have to do all these things also. And if you want to do trade in futures, then you have to understand options also. So I feel that indirect participation in markets can be a very great way of capitalizing on these growth of capital markets. And somehow we generally promote indirect participation through ETFs, through mutual funds. Those who are richer, they can go through PMS, or still you want to take some more risk, then you can go through AIFs. So direct equities and indirect equities. So somehow I feel that these are the ways. And in different instruments also, if you want to go for gold, I think there are now paper gold also, there are gold mutual funds also, then there is an index also we are talking about. And if you want to get into real estate, then I told about this particular instrument of REIT. If you want to get into equities, then there are these ways. So diversification is a must. And as you have rightly told, Vadwaji, that 100 minus your age is your exposure towards equity, and the rest. And during the corona period also, we have seen कि कैसे FD की अहमियत, कैसे गोल्ड की अहमियत समझ में आने लग गई. आज तो गोल्ड में वो सेफ हेवन अपील थोड़ी कम दिखने लग गई है, या हेज अगेंस्ट इन्फ्लेशन वाला जो फ्लेवर है वो थोड़ा कम दिख रहा है. आज हालांकि गोल्ड अच्छा चल रहा, हो सकता है कि इन्फ्लेशन के डेटा आ रहे हैं उसकी वजह से भी एक रिएक्ट कर रहा हो, बट ओवरऑल गोल्ड सिल्वर का एक रेशियो होता है, वो रेशियो भी एक गजब सा इम्बैलेंस्ड हो रखा है. गोल्ड सिल्वर के रेशियोज आज मैं कमोडिटीज के दिग्गजों के सामने बोलने में थोड़ा डर तो लग रहा है, बट एनीवेज आई कीप ट्रैकिंग द रेशियो गोल्ड सिल्वर. तो गोल्ड सिल्वर के रेशियोज बहुत ही गजब के हो रखे हैं और सिल्वर के फेवर में है. सो लेट्स सी हाउ इट गोज लाइक. एंड दैट्स व्हाई पिछले कुछ दिनों में सिल्वर ने सडनली स्पाइक दिया और गोल्ड उस हिसाब से परफॉर्म नहीं किया. देन आई थिंक आई विल टॉक मोर अबाउट the sectors also, as I have been told that we can talk about sectors that if in equities we have to come, and how we can डाइवर्सिफाई आवर पोर्टफोलियो अक्रॉस सेक्टर्स, बिकॉज राजेश जी ने बहुत अच्छी बात कही कि सारे अंडे अगर एक बैग में रख दें तो वैसे ही प्रॉब्लम हो जाती है। तो वी हैव टू, अगर इक्विटीज में भी आ रहे हैं तो हमारा पोर्टफोलियो बहुत ही वेल डाइवर्सिफाइड होना चाहिए। जनरली वी रेकमेंड दैट यू नो इफ यू हैव अ पोर्टफोलियो ऑफ से 25 lakhs, तो 4 से 5% एक स्टॉक में रखना चाहिए और सेक्टर भी उसमें देखें। तो एटलीस्ट कई लोग होते हैं आजकल सेक्टर एग्नोस्टिक भी होते हैं, बोले हमें सेक्टर से मतलब नहीं, हमें स्टॉक से मतलब, हमें कंपनी स्पेसिफिक देखते हैं, हमको मार्केट से भी मतलब नहीं होता है। बट फाइनली एक बात बता दूं कि मार्केट्स चलते हैं तो स्टॉक्स चलते हैं, इस बात को हम नकार नहीं सकते हैं। ठीक है, इन द लॉन्ग रन समहाउ मार्केट्स विल यू नो अगेन रिवाइव एंड स्टॉक्स विल अगेन स्टार्ट परफॉर्मिंग, बट स्टिल आई फील दैट यू नो मार्केट्स के साथ सेक्टर्स चलेंगे और सेक्टर्स के साथ मतलब मार्केट्स और इकोनॉमी चलेगी तो सेक्टर्स चलेंगे और सेक्टर्स ढूंढना और इस समय पे बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। सो आई हैव गॉट सम सेक्टर्स जो कि अभी, और अब बजट आने वाला है तो उसके पहले कई सेक्टर्स की बहुत ज्यादा अहमियत बढ़ जाती है एंड ओवरऑल इंडियन इकोनॉमी के लिए कुछ सेक्टर्स जो बहुत ही प्रॉमिसिंग लग रहे हैं। सो आई जस्ट टॉक अबाउट सम सेक्टर्स एंड सम लीडर्स ऑफ दोस सेक्टर्स। लाइक आई एम वेरी बुलिश ऑन एग्री इनपुट्स, मतलब इंडिया की अगर बात करें तो एग्रेरियन इकोनॉमी है। सो आई ऑलवेज कीप टॉकिंग अबाउट एग्रीकल्चरल यू नो इनपुट्स, लाइक यू नो हम अगर बात करें कोरामंडल इंटरनेशनल, बेयर क्रॉप साइंस, या फर्टिलाइजर्स की बात करें तो आरसीएफ है या जीएनएफसी, जीएसएफसी, इन टाइप की कंपनीज बहुत बढ़िया लगते हैं। सो इंडिया के लिए एग्रीकल्चरल इनपुट बहुत ही जबरदस्त सेक्टर है। फिर मुझे ऑटो एंड ऑटो इंसिलरीज, इनफैक्ट देखा हमने कैसे महिंद्रा एंड महिंद्रा, टीवीएस मोटर्स एंड मारुति हैव परफॉर्म्ड इन द लास्ट फ्यू मंथ्स। दे हैव एक्चुअली आउटपरफॉर्म्ड द मार्केट्स, दे वर एक्चुअली कॉन्ट्रारियन स्टॉक्स फॉर द मार्केट्स एंड दे हैव डन ब्रिलियंटली। एंड इनफैक्ट अभी भी मुझे लगता है कि इंडियन ऑटो इंसिलरी स्टॉक्स बहुत ही सस्ते वैल्यूएशंस पे, और जिस तरीके से वेटिंग लिस्ट लगी हुई है, जिस तरीके से इंडियन इकोनॉमी में भी, अगर हम इंडिया की बात नहीं करें, भारत की बात करें, भारत का मतलब होता है जो एक्चुअल इंडिया है, जो रूरल इंडिया है, वहां पे जिस तरीके की ग्रोथ हम देख रहे हैं, जो कंजम्पशन पैटर्न्स में चेंजेस है, वो लगता है कि ऑटो अभी तो कुछ नहीं हुआ। हम तो शहर में जो देखते हैं वहां तो एटलीस्ट चलाने के लिए रास्ते भी है, वहां खाली रहते हैं रास्ते, तो वहां पे अभी बहुत कंजम्पशन आना। बिकॉज आई बिलोंग टू वेरी स्मॉल टाउन इन असम, एंड व्हेन आई लेफ्ट असम देयर वर माय टाउन, देयर वर ओनली 5 cars इन द सिटी, जिनमें से 1 या 2 हमारे पास हुआ करती थी, हमारी फैमिली के पास, पूरे शहर में नहीं होती थी। और अब आज हर घर में, हर जगह, पूरा गांव में वहां के छोटे छोटे 700-800 छोटे विलेजेस है उस डिस्ट्रिक्ट में, हर जगह दुनिया भर की कारें हैं। तो इस तरीके की ग्रोथ हम वहां से देख के आ रहे हैं, तो मुझे लगता है कि वो ग्रोथ हर जगह रेप्लिकेट होगी। सो आई फील ऑटो एंड ऑटो इंसिलरीज, ऑटोज में जनरली ईवीज की बातें बहुत कर रहे हैं, बट आई एम वेरी बुलिश ऑन ईवी 2-wheelers, यस, बट वहां पे स्टार्टअप्स आके बहुत जबरदस्त डिस्ट्रप्शन कर रहे हैं। तो इसलिए मैं ईवी के भी एंसिलरीज पे जाना चाहता हूँ। जो प्योरली ईवी बना रहे हैं उनकी इतनी लाइफ इजी नहीं होने वाली है। जैसे हीरो मोटो को फिर भी आ गया, हीरो मोटो को और दूसरी कंपनी सब ईवी व्हीकल्स लाएंगे, बट कितने सारे जो फंडेड स्टार्टअप्स है, जैसे कि हम ओलास ऑफ द वर्ल्ड की बात करें, वो लोग जब आते हैं तो वो लोग डिसरप्ट करते हैं मार्केट को। सो वी हैव टू बी केयरफुल अबाउट द ओवरहाइप्ड ईवी थीम। सो समहाउ आई एम नॉट वेरी कॉन्फिडेंट अबाउट यू नो बैंकिंग ऑन दैट थीम, दो आई नो दैट दिस विल डू वेरी वेल, बट अब किस शेप में आएगा, किस कंपनियों को फायदा होगा वो पता नहीं। टाटा मोटर्स की आज लोग बात कर रहे हैं, बट टाटा मोटर्स की बैलेंस शीट देख के मुझे डर लगता है, इतने डेट्स वाली कंपनी और इतनी फियर्सली कॉम्पिटिटिव सेगमेंट में। देन बैंक्स, मतलब मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि इतने दिन तो प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स डार्लिंग्स हुआ करते थे, मार्केट्स के भी, इंस्टीट्यूशंस के भी, और एफआईआईज, कोई भी एफआईआई को आप बात करें तो उनसे बात करें तो उनको सबसे ज्यादा इंडिया की अगर कोई चीज अच्छी लगती है तो प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स है। दे विल टॉक अबाउट एचडीएफसी बैंक, आईसीआईसीआई बैंक एंड ऑल दीज। तो मुझे भी समाओ ये दोनों बैंक्स बहुत अच्छी लगती है, और कोटक है, इंडसइंड बैंक है, बट ओल्ड जनरेशन प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स लाइक फेडरल बैंक, जो नाम से लगते हैं कि पीएसयूज है, बट ये लोग ओल्ड जनरेशन प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स है। एंड नाउ गवर्नमेंट इज वेरी वेरी पर्टिकुलर अबाउट द पीएसयूज ऑफ द कंट्री आल्सो, एंड पीएसयू बैंक्स भी अच्छा करेंगे, एंड एसबीआई, बीओबी, वी हैव सीन हाउ दे आर डूइंग। देन मुझे लगता है बिल्डिंग मटेरियल्स इज अगेन वन ग्रेट सेगमेंट। लोग कंस्ट्रक्शन की बात कर रहे हैं, रियल एस्टेट की बात कर रहे हैं, और रियल एस्टेट में गजब की तेजी आई है, क्योंकि वहां पे भी पूरी रीप्राइसिंग हुई है। अगर आप देखेंगे, रीप्राइसिंग का मतलब कि जैसे दूसरे एसेट क्लासेस के दाम बढ़े हैं, इतने नोट्स प्रिंट हुए थे, तो सर्टेनली रियल एस्टेट में वो पैसा जब आता है तो वो सारी रियल एस्टेट की प्राइस को ऊपर ले जा रहे हैं। बट इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू एनकैश ऑन रियल एस्टेट प्राइसेस एंड रियल एस्टेट स्टॉक्स ऑल्सो, बिकॉज रियल एस्टेट की जो कंपनियां हैं उनकी बैलेंस शीट वो कंफर्ट नहीं देती कि आप वो स्टॉक्स ले लें। तो आई ऑलवेज प्ले अ सरोगेट गेम, एंड सरोगेट वे में आप अगर घुसना चाहते हैं रियल एस्टेट में तो एक सबसे बढ़िया टूल है वो है सीमेंट स्टॉक्स को लीजिए, बिल्डिंग मटेरियल्स वाले स्टॉक लीजिए, जैसे कि आप इंटीरियर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में प्लाईवुड की बात करें, एस्बेस्टस शीट्स की बात करें, फिर बिल्डर्स हार्डवेयर की बात करें, आप सैनिटरी वेयर की बात करें, तो ये सारा सेक्टर बहुत बढ़िया करने वाले आने वाले सालों में। फिर केमिकल्स, आप अगर चाइना +1 देखें या यूरोप +1 देखें और पीएलआईज को देखें तो केमिकल्स इज डूइंग वेरी वेल, एंड इंडिया के केमिकल्स के स्टॉक्स अगर देखें तो गजब का करे, जैसे कि अतुल लिमिटेड है या एसआरएफ है या आरती इंडस्ट्रीज है, बालाजी अमाइंस है, दीपक नाइट्राइट है, ये सब बहुत बढ़िया कर रहे हैं। और जो नाम ले रहा हूं कोई जरूरी नहीं कि वो मेरी हॉट पिक्स है या टॉप पिक्स है, बट जस्ट दैट कि मैं टू मेक सेक्टर मोर इजी टू अंडरस्टैंड, आई एम जस्ट टेकिंग द नेम्स। कंज्यूमर ड्यूरेबल्स, यस, इंडिया का देखिए ये जिस तरीके से रूरल कंजम्पशन बढ़ रहा है, तो मुझे लगता है कि कंज्यूमर ड्यूरेबल्स इज अगेन वन सेक्टर टू लुक ऑन। एंड इनफैक्ट व्हाइट गुड्स एक बार थोड़ा भले ही नीचे आया वो पिछले कुछ दिनों से, बट ओवरऑल मुझे लगता है कि ये सेक्टर बहुत जबरदस्त चलने वाला है। जैसे वहां पे हम वोल्टास देखते हैं, वर्लपूल देखते हैं, टीटी के प्रेस्टीज देखते हैं, सो ऑल दिस स्टॉक्स विल डू वेल। सो इंडिया थीम में, इंडिया ग्रोथ स्टोरी, भारत स्टोरी पे कंज्यूमर ड्यूरेबल्स रियली लुक्स गुड। इंजीनियरिंग समहाउ एंड कैपिटल गुड स्टॉक्स बहुत अच्छा लग रहे हैं, क्योंकि जिस तरीके से अब मेक इन इंडिया के ऊपर सरकार का फोकस है और मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के ऊपर जबरदस्त फोकस है, बिकॉज मैन्युफैक्चरिंग का जो जीडीपी में जो शेयर है उसको सरकार बढ़ाना चाहती है, क्योंकि अगर जो हमारा टारगेट है जीडीपी का ग्रोथ का 5 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी का, तो वो प्योरली आपके मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, एग्रीकल्चरल जीडीपी जब बढ़ेंगे तब आएंगे, क्योंकि सर्विस सेक्टर में तो हम ऑलरेडी बहुत अच्छा कर रहे हैं। सो गवर्नमेंट अंडरस्टैंड्स दिस एंड यहाँ पे बहुत फोकस कर रही है। तो इंजीनियरिंग, कैपिटल गुड्स जैसे एलएनटी और ये सारे केना मेटल और ये कुछ बहुत सारी कंपनीज है, इसमें लिस्ट इज लॉन्ग, तो यहाँ पे ध्यान दे सकते हैं। फिर मैंने आईटी की अगर हम बात करें तो देखिए आईटी सदाबहार सेक्टर रहेगा इंडिया का। ठीक, आज विप्रो टूटा, आज अभी थोड़ी देर में इन्फोसिस का रिजल्ट आने वाला है, बहुत सारी चीजें, टीसीएस का रिजल्ट आके गया, एक बार लैकलस्टर हो रखा है, यूएस इज नॉट डूइंग वेल, दैट्स व्हाई दिस कंपनीज मे नॉट डू वेल। बट एक चीज मैं बता दूं, ये कंपनियां ओल्ड जनरेशन आईटी कंपनीज तो है ही है, साथ में ये न्यू जेन आईटी जो है, जैसे कि आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, आईओटी, ये सारी चीजों को जबरदस्त तरीके से इनऑर्गेनिकली ग्रो कर रही है और ये कंपनियां वापस से बहुत अच्छा करेंगी। सो आई एम वेरी बुलिश ऑन आईटी स्टॉक्स एंड द आईटी सेक्टर ऑफ इंडिया। ठीक है, समय लगेगा 1.5 साल 2 साल, बट आगे आने वाले सालों में ये बहुत अच्छा करेंगे। इंफ्रा की हम बात कर रहे थे, जिस तरीके से सरकार ने लास्ट बजट में इंफ्रा के ऊपर 7 लाख करोड़ का बजट के बारे में बात की है, पुश के बारे में, तो इंफ्रा स्टॉक्स विल डू वेल। एंड आई टॉक्ड अबाउट इनबिट्स आल्सो कि इंफ्रा पुश पे अगर काम करना तो इनबिट्स के थ्रू करे, बाकी एलएनटी इज अ बिग प्रॉक्सी प्ले फॉर इंफ्रा। फिर आईआरबी इंफ्रा की हम बात कर रहे हैं या जीएमआर इंफ्रा, ठीक है एयरपोर्ट्स के, बट उस पे मुझे बहुत ज्यादा कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं आता ड्यू टू द बैलेंस शीट क्वालिटी। देन अगेन पेंट्स की, बिल्डिंग मटेरियल्स में पेंट्स आ जाता है। कुछ ये कमोडिटी स्टॉक्स, पेपर समहाउ पोस्ट कोरोना बहुत बढ़िया लगने लगा है, शुगर है ये बहुत बढ़िया लगने लगा है, टेक्सटाइल्स बिकॉज बहुत बड़ा एम्प्लॉयर है तो सरकार बहुत ज्यादा फोकस कर रही है। सो ये सेक्टर्स वैसे हिस्टोरिकली लो पी वाले स्टॉक्स होते हैं, बट इनमें कंफर्ट बहुत अच्छा मिलता है क्योंकि इनमें बैलेंस शीट अब बहुत सुधर गई है। एंड पावर एंसिलरीज, ये बहुत पावरफुल सेक्टर लगता है, सरकार इसके ऊपर जिस तरीके से पुश दे रही है, तो पावर के साथ पावर एंसिलरी को प्ले करें, क्योंकि पावर में अगेन एक प्रॉब्लम आ जाती है, डेट हैवी बैलेंस शीट्स आती है वहां पे कंपनीज की, और पावर एंसिलरी को ऑटोमेटिक फायदा मिलता है इन सब चीजों का। सो आई ऑलवेज ट्राई टू प्ले थ्रू एंसिलरीज टू प्ले द मेन थिंग। फिर टेक्सटाइल्स की मैंने बात की। रेलवेज लास्ट बट नॉट द लीस्ट, मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि रेलवेज एज अ सेक्टर बहुत जबरदस्त है, सरकार जिस तरीके से पीएसयूज के ऊपर। एंड लास्ट बट नॉट द लीस्ट अगेन डिफेंस का नाम मैं सबसे पहले नहीं लिया, डिफेंस के ऊपर जितना बजट सरकार एलोकेट कर रही है और जितना उस चीज की अहमियत समझ रही है, और अभी देखिए हमने किस तरीके से हल जो हिंदुस्तान एरोनॉटिक्स है या बीईएल भारत इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स या जीआरएससी, ये सारे स्टॉक्स गजब का काम किए हैं। सो आई फील कि सेक्टर्स बहुत सारे हैं, तो सारे सेक्टर मुझे तो अच्छे लगते हैं इंडिया में, क्योंकि इंडिया बहुत अच्छा लगता है, इंडिया स्टोरी पे बहुत कॉन्फिडेंस है। बट एक चीज मैं बोलना चाहूंगा कि मुझे जो अच्छा नहीं लगता है, अ बिग नो टू दीज लिस्टेड स्टार्टअप्स, जो अभी रिसेंटली जो स्टार्टअप्स आए हैं और वहां पे जो इन्वेस्टर्स के पैसे जले हैं और वो आगे भी जलेंगे, क्योंकि वहां पे एक तो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज समझने की है कि ये स्टार्टअप्स जो आते हैं, ये लोग अपने जब इन्वेस्टर्स को लाते हैं, प्राइवेट इक्विटी इन्वेस्टर्स को, तब उनको एक कमिटमेंट रहता है कि 3 साल में हम लिस्टिंग करवाएंगे, और ये लिस्टिंग करवाते और ये ओएफएस के थ्रू अपना माल रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स के गले में डाल देते हैं। और रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स को वो नाम इसलिए अच्छा लगता है कि उनको दिखता है, जोमेटो दिख रहा है, पेटीएम दिख रहा है, वो दिखता है बस, वो बैलेंस शीट तो वो लोग देखते नहीं है। और हम लोग चैनल्स के माध्यम से मैं जी बिजनेस पे हर बार बोलता हूँ, मेरे यूट्यूब पे या ट्विटर पे, कि प्लीज 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 अगर इनको आप पोर्टफोलियो में डालना चाहते हैं तो टोटल पोर्टफोलियो का 5% डालिए, और उस 5% में भी आप कम से कम 5 से 7 स्टॉक्स डालिए, अलग अलग, कोई एक चीज चल जाएगी आपके सारे पैसे निकल जाएंगे। सो स्टार्टअप्स में हाई रिस्क इन्वेस्टर्स, और ये बेसिकली प्राइवेट इक्विटी के लिए, पब्लिक इक्विटी के लिए नहीं है, बस ठीक है फॉर लिस्टिंग पर्पस दे आर देयर, एंड लेट्स सी कैसे होता है। नायका धीरे धीरे थोड़ा इंप्रूव कर रही है, आगे कैसे होता है। सो एक्सचेंज एंड मार्केट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इंस्टीट्यूशंस, इन पे बहुत भरोसा मुझे ऐसा लगता है एक्सचेंज इकोसिस्टम विल डू वेरी वेल। हमने देखा CDSL में जो 200 रुपए से रेकमेंड करते आ रहा हूँ, BSE गजब का, मतलब कोरोना के बाद टूटा था, NSE की लिस्टिंग होना बाकी है। सो आई थिंक ये सारे सेक्टर्स है। सो डाइवर्सिफिकेशन इज द मंत्रा, एंड आई रियली अप्रिशिएट द थीम ऑफ द वेबिनार, एंड थैंक यू सो मच फॉर गिविंग मी द अपॉर्चुनिटी।
Thank you, Sandeep ji. As you are popularly known as जैन साहब, एंड जैन साहब के जेम्स, तो आपने जेम्स बताए हैं आने वाले जो सेक्टर्स होंगे। एंड आई विल ऐड हियर दैट नए इन्वेस्टर को, जैसे इन्होंने कहा डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट में ये थीम्स हैं, तो इसी तरह से नए इन्वेस्टर को अगर वो चाहता है मार्केट में पार्टिसिपेट करना और एक्सपर्ट की राय लेता है, या वो म्यूचुअल फंड के थ्रू आता है, तो वो बहुत अच्छा रूट है। और जो सेक्टर इन्होंने बोले हैं वो उनकी थीमेटिक इन्वेस्टमेंट है, थीमेटिक म्यूचुअल फंड के यूनिट्स हैं, उनके थ्रू भी आप इन्वेस्टमेंट कर सकते हो। तो मैं अपने नेक्स्ट पैनलिस्ट श्री नवीन माथुर जी को इनवाइट करूंगा यहाँ पर। नवीन जी, आप कमोडिटीज भी देख रहे हैं, करेंसीज भी देख रहे हैं, और जो नई अपॉर्चुनिटी आई है गिफ्ट सिटी में, वहाँ क्या नए इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स हैं? क्या वहां पर हमारे जो इन्वेस्टर्स हैं वो पार्टिसिपेट कर सकते हैं IFSC में, गिफ्ट सिटी में? क्या वो नए इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स हैं जहां पर वो इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं? और आपका व्यू डाइवर्सिफिकेशन के ऊपर एसेट में?
Thank you, Vadvaji. Would like to thank Sabharwal sir, and thank you very much for Mr. Rajesh Dangeti from SEBI for organizing this particular webinar. Good to see Ashok after a long time, very long time. I think, Ashok, we haven't spoken and we haven't met, so it's a great pleasure to see you today in this webinar. I won't take much of the time because I think Sandeep has spoken about a lot in terms of whatever the investment options are. What I would say is that we need to understand where we stand today in the current markets and where we were earlier. Now, what we are talking about is the diversification, sir. So the topic is the diversification, the investment in different asset classes. So I'll speak for 5-10 minutes on that and just take 2 or 3 minutes later on in terms of what are the opportunities available in GIFT and the other places too. I think what you have said, what Mr. Rajesh Dangeti has said, and what Kishore also pointed out is the diversification in the volatile times is very important. So there are two things for the diversification. As I was saying, my father's generation didn't know about diversification. They didn't even invest in stocks. So they did it whatever the FD or the post office savings schemes were there. So largely the fixed income products. Of late, in the last 5-6 years, we have seen a lot many instruments in the financial markets. So from the orthodox instruments, or I would say primary instruments earlier used to be stocks, bonds, and real estate. That's not the case today. So we have other products too in the form of AIF, in form of all many things where the investor or the person interested to diversify their asset class can do it. So what you also said and what Sandeep said, there's a diversification by broadly the name. So you can have the diversification within equity for different stocks. But at the same time, if you want to do the diversification among the various different asset classes, you need to be sure of the correlation. So the key word is the correlation. Say for example, if you are investing in mutual funds, you should invest in different type of mutual funds, different category of mutual funds based upon the correlation of these mutual funds or the industry in equity market or in mutual funds, because the underlying is definitely either the equity or the bonds. So I think the diversification within the asset class also you can do. You can buy, say for example, a defensive stock, and you can buy an aggressive stock. You can buy a stock which is an all-time favorite. Whatever the market happens, it doesn't go too much of the volatile. It doesn't have too much of the beta with the market. So I think the diversification within the asset class also is possible. And the better thing is, as Mr. Rajesh Dangeti in his opening remarks says, that you cannot have all the eggs in one basket. So that particular phrase itself means that the eggs are assets here, means the different products. So you don't need to get all your eggs or the product in one basket, which means that you are only and only invested, say, for example, in equity or just the real estate. So you have to have the eggs in different baskets so that in times of volatility, the times of uncertainty, all these assets perform to the best advantage of yours. I'll give you just two examples. I won't take too much of the time here. 2008, 2009, when the global recession, the financial crisis happened, the equity markets turned very bad. Means we lost money on equity markets, but at the same time, and I'm talking about 2008 here, when you don't have so many products at that particular point of time, the investment products at that particular point of time, so you had only two or three. You can do only equity, you can do real estate, you can do bonds, or the commodities. So if we know at that particular point of time itself that in 2011 the gold touched at that particular point the highest in terms of the dollar value and highest in terms of the rupee value too. So if your equity markets were not performing because of those reasons of uncertainty and other things, the commodity markets, I think I remember in July 2008 the crude touched all-time high of around $147 or so in August 2020, August or July 2008. So I think the diversification per se neutralizes your losses. If you keep the diversified portfolio, it neutralizes the losses you make in one of the market segments, in one of the asset classes, to the diversification, with the help of the diversification to the profitable asset classes. So 2020, we all know the equity markets were in a problem. All the risk assets were not doing too great, including the real assets, the real estate or the equity markets, and even the bonds to a large extent. But at the same time, if you remember August 2020, exactly 12 years after the crude made its all-time high, the gold also touched an all-time high, both in Indian terms, Indian rupee terms, and the dollar terms. If you're losing your portfolio on the equity markets because of the COVID, because of everything, whatever we saw, the economy on the standstill, you still had an option to make money if you would have diversified into gold, which touched all-time high. So the point which I'm trying to make is that you need to understand the correlation. You cannot invest everything in the risky asset class, and if the risky asset class doesn't work, so all your assets within that risky asset class portfolio would take a beating. But at the same time, if you have a negative correlation to the commodity, or I would say to the asset classes, then it works well. So if one is going down and the negative correlation helps you to make money in the other asset classes. So this is one part of the asset diversification. I would like to share one screen, if the host, if Prashant can allow me to share one slide, which I would like to show, which is Prashant, if you can just allow me to open up the screen share. I would like to show just the one slide, which helps to understand what we were talking about, the risk reward ratio and the benefits of the diversification. In the meanwhile, while Prashant is putting me up on sharing the screen. Vadva sir, your question is pretty much right. Because of the Gift City, not many things have opened. So there were confusions among the people earlier that although we have heard about the Gift City too much, but it's not happening. I think every union budget in the last 4 or 5 years has something or the other in terms of the reforms for the Gift City. And we are very active on the Gift City. So we are members of the exchanges there. We are members of both the exchanges there, the NSE IFSC and the India INX. We do the global access stuff from India INX Global Access, and we also have the trading and the self-clearing membership of the IABX. So IABX, I think, is one of the great opportunities for people who are in the physical markets of gold to import gold through as a qualified jeweler. And if you want to import it, you can go to the IABX exchange. You can become either the client of a member like us, or you can do it on your own with the membership of that exchange. So I think there are a couple of things which are good. The government is interested to develop, and since it's a pet project of our Honorable Prime Minister itself, so I think whatever we hear on a normal course, that the PMO takes the direct understanding of what's happening on the ground with respect to the Gift City venture. So I think the Gift City has too many things. You can access the global access markets, 135 markets through India INX Global Access. So you can access all these asset classes in the international market. So as part of the diversification too, therefore, after the COVID, if you understand, lot many mutual funds came up suddenly offering international stocks or international mutual fund schemes which have interests in investing on these stocks like Amazon and all these stuff. So people realize that if you are all dependent on India or maybe any other country, it's not worthwhile to do it. So and I would say with the changes in the geopolitical scenario which is happening currently, I would say that it is not a good thing to be invested with just only one or two countries. You have to have the portfolio accessible to the globalized world, and in that particular direction, I think the global access platform, where we are very much active and we are seeing interest of the people coming in to access 135 markets across all the asset classes, including the PMSs and the mutual funds of the recognized international AMC. So it's one of the other things which the people are realizing to enter on the Gift City. If Prashant has given me the access, I'll just show you one of the slides, so Vadva sir, can you see the slide, Vadva?
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
So it is a study which has been done by CME a few years back. And since the entire discussion has been revolving around the returns versus the risk, I'm starting from the first traditional portfolio. It's a study done by the Chicago Mercantile Exchange few years back. And when we don't have those instruments, varied instruments, so it is done on 3 of the asset classes, which is commodities, stocks, and bonds. So I'll start with the traditional portfolio, which normally, as I started off saying that generation earlier, people used to just be invested in stocks and bonds because you didn't have any other asset classes options to be invested with. So 55% stocks out of 100 rupees and 45 rupees you spend on a bond. Now the horizontal, the x-axis is the standard deviation, and by standard deviation I'm saying the risk, simply the risk. 8.6 to 9.8, what you see on the x-axis is the risk. On the y-axis you have the returns, so from 14% to 15.6%. Now here is an interesting stuff. The traditional portfolio, if you see, on your right hand side with 55% stocks and 45% bonds has the highest risk versus the lowest return. The return is around 14%, but your risk is 9.6% plus. Now move back to the left, you add up the managed futures are commodities if you include in your portfolio. So if you see this particular portfolio, which has 50% stocks, which is the risk asset, which is 40% bonds, which is the fixed income, and you add 10% of the commodities into the portfolio. In India, you don't have too much of the space in investing commodity for the retail customers. You can only do it through various instruments available for gold and silver, where you can invest. So even if you do that 10% of your portfolio or the corpus, you get a better risk adjusted return. So we were talking about risk adjusted return. This is the practical example of how the return has become from around 14% to approximately 14.5%, and your risk from 9.5%, 9.6%, it has become down to approximately 8.9% or so. The best part is this, so that the third portfolio, which is 45% stocks, 35% bonds, and 20% on the commodities. And that is the most effective and the efficient of all. You get the lowest risk at around 8.7, but you get the highest of the returns with respect to 14.9%. So best risk adjusted return comes when you invest in commodities, or I would say any other non-correlated to the stocks and bonds. You invest 15% or so of those asset classes to your portfolio, which helps you to bring the best risk-adjusted return. Lastly, what I'm trying to show is the economies of scale work to an extent, but they don't work beyond a point of time, beyond the point at a certain point. So if you see the fourth portfolio on the top right-hand side with 37% bonds, 37% stocks, 27% bonds, and 35% of the commodity, it doesn't well. Although your return has become better, but your risk also has been enhanced. So the best portfolio, therefore, means if we talk about from the commodity perspective, that you have the stocks, the riskier assets, to around 45%. You have bonds to an extent of the fixed income portion of your portfolio should be around 35-40%. And the rest 15% or so can be invested for certain commodities. And in this particular case for India, it would be more relevant with respect to gold and silver. So with that thought, I think I would like to leave the space for the other participants to take it up. What was allotted to me for 10 minutes, I think I've covered and have justified to the theme of this particular webinar. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen-ji. It's always a pleasure to listen to you here also on the TV also. So I acknowledge here the presence of Mr. Ashok Mittal, our National Executive Member, who was very active earlier. Now he has diversified and he has his own entrepreneur on a pressed finance. So I'll request him to speak something about his venture and on the diversification of assets. Ashokji.
Thank you very much, Vadavaji, and it was really nice to get all these people again and listen to them, although extremely good, and I'm sure all those people who would be watching the webinar or they will be looking at it later on, it will be very useful because all these people are kind of expert in their segment. So while I was listening to them, and I just thought, because I was not really thinking of talking, but I thought, what is that diversification between the segment which these people have spoken, more importantly from the stock perspective. So when people spoke about, say, investing in particular theme type stocks, which Sandeep spoke, so one idea came to my mind was for investors, when they invest in various companies, one way of investing is also to invest looking at the capital size or size of the company. So it can be maybe large cap stocks, some amount, because they are more liquid, considered as safer stocks from the stock perspective, but not necessarily that you invest entire money within the same segment. For example, if I'm doing banking and IT and auto, and I invest all the money in only large cap stock. So not necessarily all the investment should be in, say, BSE 30 or NSE 50 stocks, but I should also look at, as an investor, that I do invest some amount in large cap stocks, some in mid cap, some in small cap, and some in maybe micro cap. So it is necessary to find out that which are those stocks which are today, let's say, small cap, and tomorrow they will become mid cap, from mid cap they will become large cap. Of course, it will also depend on the risk appetite of the investor, but it is not really necessary for all the investors to invest only in one particular type of stocks within the same industry also. So if you are looking to invest in infrastructure stocks, so maybe there is large cap also, there is mid cap also, and this also would be a kind of, diversification. During my stint and in the stock market, I found that most investors have their favorite segment also. So somebody likes banking, somebody likes IT, somebody likes auto. So they have their liking. Now, if I really like to invest in banking because I understand banking, which stock do I invest? So I should not really be investing only in one particular type of stocks. Similarly, a lot of people are very fond of investing in small cap or even micro cap, or what they call as penny stocks. It is not a very good idea. They also, when they want to diversify, they should also look at other say segments within the same stock. One more segment which I have found, in fact, I was not much aware about it during my stockbroking days, and in fact, brokers do not do it and it's not regulated. But I found that outside this, there are a lot of people who invest in unlisted stocks, which I believe is legal or something, the way they want to invest in. There are certain platforms I saw. So that is also one kind of diversification which people can look at, subject to the compliances and everything, because a lot of those stocks are ready to get listed, right? Similarly, there is a lot of movement or action happening on SME exchanges, on BSE as well as NSE, where retail investors can invest, although the ticket size may be slightly higher. But there also some stocks have moved a lot. They have given good returns. And some of them have also moved to the what we call as main board, right? So SME IPOs also something, a very good idea, I believe, which are traded on the exchange platform to diversify some of your investments. I think this is the point perhaps not got covered. Other than that, one more segment which I like and which very few people actually invest is the debt market, the corporate debt or any debt market, which is actually listed on which can be done on the stock exchanges. So that is one segment which has actually not picked up very well. But when you want to invest in debt instruments, so not necessarily we invest in NCDs or corporate debt or fixed deposits issued by various companies, but the debt instrument on the stock exchanges are extremely good instrument to invest into. Of course, they are not very popular as of now, but I feel that's a very good segment to be in, and it is quite similar to what Sandeep spoke about, that you don't take a direct exposure on the segment, but you invest in the exchange. And last point is that, of course, out of stock exchanges market, but a lot of investments are happening in startups, and a lot of platforms who offer you this kind of investment option where you can do a lot of investment, maybe small ticket investment as well. Of course, they are very high risk, high reward segment. But there is also, I have seen a lot of stock market people, even experts of stock market, investing in startup. So if you do good read, then it is a good idea. And last point which I want to mention is, and especially for the public, when we speak about all these kind of diversification, whether equity, commodity, currency, mutual fund, between them or intra segment also, from whom you take advice. So a lot of people have been doing it by hearing from the people. It is necessary that they should take expert advice. They should look at the people, let's say these 5, 6, 7, 10 people on the right now who are advising, they are experts. But it is difficult for the retail investors to reach out to them every now and then. It is necessary that people should look at the empaneled or approved experts or research analysts or investment advisors by SEBI. So it is necessary that advice has to be taken only from the SEBI approved experts. So all these retail investors should also look at, when they look at opinion on the stocks or commodities, they should look at this segment. Thank you so much. And thanks for giving me some time to speak.
Thank you, Ashokji. Thank you for bringing in the alternative investment part also, which we missed out earlier, and bringing in different dimension to the investment. Definitely, we all the time say that do's and do nots, and one of the do's is that we should go to the registered advisors and registered members, brokers, and take advice from them. And since we are doing many programs, this is a one program on World Investor Week, which we are doing virtually. So there was a lot of advice, a lot of content today. So we'll use this content for our future also, for educating the first-time investor and to our clients. We'll use this content, use this YouTube also for that. And I'll request our member friends who are present here to use this YouTube for your clients. Our बीच पिता में जो हम बोलते हैं सबरवाल जी को, he was traveling, that's why he was not there in our earlier this thing. He is now here. I'll request him to say a few words and conclude. Sabharwal ji, if you are there. Sabharwal ji.
I think he's not on the screen. Oh yeah, he's coming.
I think he's visible, but I think not able to connect with him. I'll request our executive member, Sunil Bansal ji, to propose formal vote of thanks to our audience and conclude also.
थैंक यू वादा साहब। सबसे अच्छी बात यह है कि जो इन्वेस्टर वीक चल रहा है और सीपीआई अपनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो सेबी के साथ जुड़ के इसको बढ़ावा दे रही है, पूरी चीजें लोगों को ग्रेजुएट कर रही है, जिससे हम ब्रोकर और आम क्लाइंट भी जो लोग जूम से जुड़ रहे हैं उनका भी कॉन्सेप्ट क्लियर हो रहा है कि हम इन्वेस्टर को कैसे अच्छी सर्विस दें जिससे कि वो लोग सही तरीके से काम कर सके और हमारी इंडस्ट्रीज का ग्रोथ हो। और जो हमारे साथ में हम लोग के आज फैकल्टी थे या सेबी की टीम हेड थे या अपनी जो टीम के जैन साहब या माथुर साहब, सब लोगों ने अपनी जो राय दिया वो बड़ी प्रैक्टिकल सी राय है कि रुपए को पैसे को कहाँ रखें, अंडे वाली बात को सबने आगे बढ़ाया, जो बहुत पुरानी बात बचपन से सुनते आए हैं, ये बहुत ही प्रैक्टिकल रही। थैंक यू ऑल। Or to you are removed.
Thank you, Sunil ji. So we have Sabharwal ji here. I'll request Sabharwal ji to say a few words and conclude also.
Thank you, Wadhwa ji. Lot of initiatives are taken by you in the World Investor Week. You had done an opening program on the first day at 2 o'clock, in which 2 officials of SEBI, 2 officials of government, all the 5 exchanges and the representative of both depositories were there. And today also with 4 excellent speakers, I am thankful to Mr. D. Rajesh, Mr. Sandeep Jain, Mr. Nimon Mathur, Mr. Kishore Narne, and Mr. Ashok Mittal. I don't think the panel which was given today, there cannot be a better panel than that. They are the four of them are the starlets of the industry. All the four of them were there. And just for the information of all of you, we have done one physical program simultaneously was going on at 4 o'clock in which DGM SEBI Ganendra Neeraj ji was present. We are doing along with PhD one web event tomorrow at 4:30, and then one on Saturday physical event is being done at SMC, and then there are one event at 10 o'clock in which Sandeep Jainji will be again the speaker, and 12 o'clock on Sunday. This is for the information of all of you. 12 o'clock on Sunday, we are doing the concluding also, again wherein we will have either the whole-time member or ED of SEBI, and then the CEOs of those exchanges and depositories which could not come in the opening session. They will be coming in the conclude session, and there will be host of other speaker. So hats off to the President CPAI that on a short notice, the 6 events, the opening, the closing, and the 4 more events, 2 physically and 3 on web. So total 7 events in the 7 days. So we are thankful to all the speakers, and the special thanks to all the participants, and very special thanks to the Secretariat of CPAI that the untiring efforts of them, we are every day making them late to sit and ensure that this is being done. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. It was a very nice program.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
अशोक जी, मैं थोड़ी देर में फोन करूंगा आपको एक और प्रोग्राम के लिए.
ठीक है सर.
Thank you everyone. Thank you Sunil ji.
Thank you so much.
Sandeep ji,
संदीप जी, संडे